Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Tuesday astrological report. This is for September 9 through September 15 of 2025. I hope everyone is doing well. So this week we are in between eclipses. Still a very fateful, destined week ahead because of eclipses, but also this week we have a lot of aspects to the nodes of fate. So there's ripple effects for things that happen this week that can have a long-term effect on the future for good or bad, depending on the situation. Now, we also have several beneficial aspects taking place this week that I'll be explaining when that is and how you can take advantage of that and who's most affected by those aspects based on degrees and the planets in your birth chart. So as far as major aspects this week, well, we start off with the minor aspect of Venus here in conjunct to the North Node of Destiny on Tuesday. I'll explain what that means. And then we also have the Sun conjunct the South Node of the Moon opposite the North Node. And there's also a sense that this week has a lot of purification and cleansing about it, either mentally, internally, or literally. And at the same time, Mercury will conjunct the South Node. So again, these are fateful, destined aspects playing out this week. And then by Friday, September 12, the Sun in Virgo will make a sextile to Jupiter. That's one of the more beneficial aspects. And then even more beneficial, Mercury in Virgo will sextile Jupiter in Cancer. So that's where there's two exalted planets connecting to each other and supporting each other. So that's definitely going to be one of the more easier days of the week. But I'll let you know when that is. And let's see, we're going to have Mercury conjunct the Sun. So that can bring a lot of realizations and kind of a turning point as well. Mercury will then take over the lead and take the other side of the Sun here. And then we get to this weekend, and the Moon will be T-squared the nodes of fate, and the Moon will also square the Sun and Mercury. So that's going to be more of a challenging time this weekend. It's the last quarter moon that we're building up to. And then by Monday, on September 15, Venus will be perfectly sextile Mars. That aspect is building up all week, but perfecting on Monday. And again, that's the lovers, that's relationships connecting in more harmony and cooperation by next week. All right, so I'll be going through all these aspects day by day, and you can find them written out for you as always in the description below. There's timestamps. There's also a link if you want to buy a personalized report from me. You can get on my work list, and we'll check out your astrology for the year ahead. Okay, so let's get started here. On Tuesday, September 9, we start things off with the Moon in Aries. So the Moon's going to be waning all through Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and ingressing Cancer by this weekend into next week. But here on Tuesday, the Moon is about halfway through Aries. So this Moon phase is building up opposition basically between Aries and Libra. This is about the self versus others. But the Moon here in Aries is being ruled by Mars in Libra. So it still comes back to the sign of relationships and one-on-one connections. But the Moon in Aries generally shows people are more impulsive. They have an emotional need for being more independent. You know, it's more about self and what the self wants to do. It's also, I think, overall looking at plans for the self and the future about the self, but we're also having to factor in relationships and other people. So it builds a little bit of tension today between us and others. And I think that Tuesday is one of the more challenging days. There's a lot of inconjunctions. There's only one easy aspect for the whole day. So I think actually the next couple days, Tuesday and Wednesday, starts this week off a little bit edgy. There's some irritation and a lot of adjustment that we have to make, generally speaking. But the Moon in Aries is impulsive. Things are a lot faster. Things are speeding up and can happen a lot quicker as we go throughout the day. So Mercury, or rather the Moon, is making several inconjunctions today, which are these green lines. So the Moon is at odds with Mercury. The Moon is inconjunct the sun in the south node. So these Virgo placements is kind of at odds with where the moon is today. And that just shows that the emotions, the feelings, the circumstances are at odds with where the focus is, where the mind is thinking about in very practical ways. We do have a lot of earth here, which is more grounded and practical and logical, and again, this Virgo side tends to be more about health life, looking at health, dealing with health matters, dealing with work and everyday routine life. That's where the focus is. But the moon here, again, it's kind of at odds with that area of the chart. So we have to make an adjustment between what we want to do versus where the focus is and where the responsibility and the work is, perhaps. It can be a little bit irritating and a lot of adjustments that have to take place today. And then that's also where Venus is. Venus is making this in conjunction to the north node of destiny. First thing in the morning here, but consider it all day long. So that means basically everything about relationships, money, resources, markets, things like that are adjusting to the future based on what plays out in that context today. Whether we realize it or not, whether we have to make adjustments in the future based on what things happen today, or our own understanding and consciousness about what's happening today in those matters, again, it can affect the future. All right, and let's see. So then the moon is building up this trine to Venus. That's the most positive aspect, or the easiest aspect today. That's going to come in this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you live in the world, after the moon makes those inconjunctions to the Virgo side of the chart. So moon trine Venus, that's a moment here. It looks like this evening and tonight for most people. It'll be really late for some people. It'll be this evening for others. Like I said, it depends on where you live. So the moon here, trine Venus, it's fire, it's passionate. There's an opening to feel more satisfied, more content, more pleasure is available. People that are most benefiting from this, I think, it's generally, the background for everyone, but it's going to be really aligned with you if you have this aspect in your birth chart. So if you have a planet at 18 degrees of Aries and a planet at 18 degrees of Leo in your birth chart, then you already have a trine between two planets, and this moon Venus are connecting to that, so you can really benefit perhaps tonight on Tuesday as the moon goes through here. Now, it doesn't last very long. It's only a few hours, but it is showing that there's this opening for more pleasure and more contentment, and maybe a better connection to relationships, self versus others, and things like that. The moon is also building up to this opposition with Mars, so it's going to really activate this Venus-Mars sextile for the rest of the week, I believe, which is this better connection between the lovers that are available for more harmony. All right, so that's what I'm seeing, and then the moon will square Jupiter, so things could get a little bit overindulgent tonight, perhaps. There could be big energy. Maybe things are a little bit out of balance here on some levels for Tuesday night. This is really late for some people. And it could be a big appetite, so to speak, just big mood, big circumstances are playing out, perhaps. It's about the self versus home, family stuff, what you're doing in your private world. And again, kind of a little bit of perhaps overindulgence in some situations. And then that leads to the moon opposite Mars for the last aspect on Tuesday night. That can really stimulate, again, mood, impulsiveness, passion, drive for things. Can add some irritation, some conflict in some cases. Plus the moon is right next to Chiron. That's going to be exact early morning hours the following day. But this could go both ways. It could be positive for some people and negative for others, depending on the situation. But be aware of it. This is super late, though. So I would say overall, check your impulsiveness for late Tuesday night. Just make sure you're doing things that are healthy or not destructive, or kind of trying to contain some indulgences perhaps that could be a little bit over the top, because Jupiter is still in this aspect with the T square as well. But because the moon is still in a trine with, coming off of that trine with Venus, it could be decent for a lot of people. And again, more pleasure, feeling more content or satisfied or enjoying yourself as well. But then whatever happens on Tuesday night, especially if it's with other people, relationships, or romance, it could perhaps trigger some insecurities or something a little bit more sensitive as we enter Wednesday on September 10, as the first aspect of the day is the moon conjunct Chiron after it opposes Mars. There is always a possibility there could be some conflict out in the world with people, relationships on Tuesday night into early morning Wednesday. So just be aware of that aspect and know that other people could be a little more impulsive, sometimes in negative ways. But if you're mindful of it, that goes a long way in keeping things in check. So early morning hours, moon and Chiron can, again, and it could bring up some sensitivity in some way here. It definitely feels like it's connected to relationships and other people, because moon Chiron is being ruled by Mars in Libra, where it's in its debilitation. All right, and like I was saying before, Tuesday and Wednesday feel like couple of the most challenging days, and then again in this weekend I think will be challenging. But the sun, as we are going through Wednesday on September 10, the sun is making this conjunction to the south node. So it looks like Wednesday is also one of these really fateful and destined days. Things that are happening could be karmic, could have a long-term effect on the future, and sometimes this can show a draining of energy for some people. Something needs to be cleansed and purified. So the more conscious you are of that and the more active role you're taking in that process, the better. What do you need to get rid of, to make things better in your life? Reorganization, purging, purifying, cleansing, cleaning things up, getting rid of things. It can be on multiple levels. It can be internally. It can be emotionally, like how you're thinking about things too. And it can be literally. So just be aware of that. I think that it's really important for people that have 18 degrees of Virgo. If you have 18 degrees of Virgo in your chart, then you're definitely aligned with this very fateful time period with these eclipses, with the Sun and Mercury conjunction that's building up as well. Also, it just highlights things of the past, generally speaking, as well. What things of the past need to be dealt with or taken care of. This can highlight things of the past in regards to health matters that are still ongoing for some people, and maybe a turning point for some people about some health matters, as Mercury will be crossing over this point as well, in charge of all this. And it looks like the moon will be changing signs as the day goes on. So the first part of the day will have a different mood and circumstance than the second half of the day, as the moon will ingress Taurus, where it's considered exalted. So this is where generally things show they're starting to slow down. People want to be more grounded and practical now. We have both the moon and the sun and earth signs and Mercury. So more earthly, more physical. And this shows a lot more about money and resources that are coming in. Now that the moon is in Taurus, it's being ruled by Venus in Leo. So Venus is in charge of the mood and the circumstances for the next 2.5 days now. So it has this connection to Leo, where that's also talking about more fun, more creativity, a little more social activity as well. But the moon also has to get past this square with Pluto. Now, every time it comes into Taurus, it squares Pluto. It's going to be a theme for years into the future. That will be the last aspect of the day, Moon square Pluto. Let's see what time this is taking place. Really, it's Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, depending on where you live. So that adds some level of intensity, a little bit of tension between the mood and this more physical side of life, things slowing down, more indulgent, more pleasurable, versus group and friends and community that might want to be a part of the situation for some people on Wednesday night, but maybe the mood is a little bit at odds with that. It can also show, in some cases, a forced change and forced transformation that's taking place on Wednesday night. And again, people that have this aspect in their birth chart, if you have 2 planets in this square already in your birth chart, roughly 1 to 2 degrees of Aquarius or 1 to 2 degrees of Taurus, then you're more likely to be affected by this. That's something that you should really know about astrology and transits, that when you see a transit up in the sky making an aspect and you have that same aspect in your birth chart with different planets, you're still, it's like connecting to your personal chart in a major way. So that's the best way to really know how you're most affected by transits, rather than just generalizing houses or signs and things. It's more of, you really need to know your personal planets and aspects in your chart. And it doesn't take that much to learn it. There's not that many. So once you memorize your own personal degrees and aspects, then every time you see it here in my weekly report, you know that it can be affecting you. And the way I work with it is, when I know my own personal challenging aspects, and when that's being activated, I tend not to do major things during that moment until it passes. Because I have tested it out many times to see, well, maybe it's okay if I just do it. And then I end up doing it and it has bad results. And I'm like, okay, astrology does work. And so knowing your own personal astrology is really beneficial. But in general, this is talking about the background of Wednesday night, just for a few hours here. It's not going to be all night, but for a few hours, has a lot of intensity, transformation, changes, a little bit of a power struggle in some cases, and that will be the last aspect of the day until we get to the following day on Thursday, September 11. And it looks like September 11, September 12th, these 2 days I think are the most beneficial. It doesn't mean every single person will have a great day. Again, it depends on your chart and how these transits align with you. But for the background, there's a lot of beneficial aspects aligning here. It's still a very fateful day on Thursday, September 11 as well. And we start things off with Mercury conjunct the south node of the moon. So it continues this theme of needing to work on things, reorganize, purify, cleanse, clean up, let things go. Again, the moon is in Taurus, so it's still being ruled by Venus, but it's still exalted. It's still a comfortable place for people, and people want things to be nicer for yourself and others. It's more creative, artistic, enjoyable, pleasurable, indulgent. Again, it deals with money and resources, but it also is aligning well with the practical side of everyday life, work and service and health that's going through karmic changes for people here. So whatever's happening on this day, it could very well affect the future with ripple effects. And again, it could also be talking about things of the past that are still being dealt with. And then the moon is also aspecting the nodes of fate as the day goes on. It's going to be the second half of the day, looking like actually Thursday night. So for most of the day, the moon is in the middle of Taurus, pretty chill, doing its thing. Everything looks pretty decent. And yeah, so the moon won't make this aspect until Thursday evening for people on the West Coast, and Thursday night for people on the East Coast, and super early morning on Friday for people in Europe. But this is where there is a lot of fate and destiny for whatever's happening on September 11th on Thursday. Just know that it's a part of this bigger picture of eclipse season that's affecting the next 6 months of life. And again, whatever is happening here is aligned with fate and destiny for the future. But Moon trine Mercury, this is where the heart and the mind are now in harmony. They're on the same page. They're cooperating with each other. This is all earth energy, so it's very grounded and practical, more physical. And then the moon is trine the sun, so this is also generally a good time of the cycle when the inner and the outer are cooperating with each other. They're also on the same page. Things can just be more smooth, generally speaking, more cooperation. And people, what they're focused on is in better alignment with how they're feeling in the background. And so, again, if you have a personal planet at 18 and 19 degrees of Virgo and 18 and 19 degrees of Taurus, then you have this trine in your birth chart, and this trine up in the sky is aligned with you. But here is where the moon connects to Jupiter and really activates a minor grand trine in one of the most positive aspects of the week that will carry over into the following day as well. So moon sextile Jupiter, and now the sun is building that sextile with Jupiter, followed up by Mercury sextile Jupiter. So Jupiter's at the apex of this minor grand trine, connecting to the luminaries and the mind and communications. This should be one of the most beneficial moments for people on late Thursday and through Friday. Now, does that mean that every single person gets the benefit of this? Not really, unfortunately. I wish so. But this is just the background. But if you have those personal planets, even roughly 19 Cancer, 19 Taurus, 19 Virgo, then you're really benefiting from this in your own life. But this is where there can be a sense of more hope or just better feelings, a better mood, better circumstances, more cooperation, even something that's beneficial that has come out here that could be fateful and destined for the future in a positive way for some people. So if you need to do anything, it's a little hard to use this to our advantage in the outside world because it is so late on Thursday night. I think the following day when the sun and then Mercury is sextile Jupiter, that's going to be a great time to use this for your advantage. If you need to go do anything mercurial, if you need to apply for something. But this kind of begins this process of this better connection going on here on Thursday night. Plus the Venus-Mars sextile is building up stronger and stronger, which will be exact next week, but it's within a few degrees already. So there's two minor grand trines. We have this world minor grand trine that's been ongoing all through the summer, talking about this, new world development that's happening, that's shaping the future of the world. And then we have this temporary one. So the apex of this minor grand trine with Jupiter comes back to feelings, emotional things. We could feel more supported in some cases with Jupiter here in Cancer, connecting to all these personal planets. It could be about home stuff, family stuff, property, real estate stuff. There could be a turning point. There could be some good news that comes in at the end of this week for some people about real estate if they are waiting on a deal or something to take place or some news about it. Or, again, if you need to make something happen, if you want to use astrology for your benefit, I think Friday is going to be a day that you're going to want to take action and use this, because trines and sextiles, they're not forced upon people. Sometimes they're so easy that people don't see a result because they don't do anything to get the benefit. You have to take action to get these trines and sextiles a lot of the time, but it still shows that this positive aspect is in place. It's just a matter of, do you reach out and grab it and use it, or do you let it slip by? So I like Thursday night, especially on a personal level, an inner level, in your place of home or where you feel comfortable with. I think that's where it's going to be at its best. Now, out in the world is a whole different story. That's out in the world is where we have Pluto here and Mars and things, above the horizon here. Saturn right here, with Saturn backing up into Pisces at 29 degrees. There's still this background heaviness and some karma here, some weight and pressure, and some stress and fear and worry for some people. But this is more on a personal, temporary level, on an inner level, in a home and a private level. It could still connect you with other people in a positive way, in a more personal way as well. But out in the world, socially, that's a whole different vibe. So just keep that in mind. And so that's the last easy aspect. And then very late on Thursday night, it'll be early Friday morning for some people. The moon is squaring Venus for the last aspect for Thursday. And that's like this mood that's really hungry for pleasure and contentment and being satisfied and being indulgent. But you have to be a little careful of that because it may be hard to get completely satisfied based on everything that was building up all day and through the evening and the night. And then people are wanting to be like having this grand finale late on Thursday, perhaps. Maybe it's just not as smooth or easy to be like 100% satisfied or content with feelings or pleasure or indulgence or relationship vibes just for a few hours. So it's not going to last. But still a strong need for pleasure and big desires and big needs. And then we get into Friday on September 12, and there's a lot of easy aspects. There's a couple challenges here and there, so it's not going to be perfect, but this is where the sun is connecting to Jupiter. So again, this is very hopeful and more optimistic, feeling more supported. I think that this is great I wish I could say for everybody that's dealing with the health issue, but for certain people where it aligns with their personal birth chart, this can be really great news or a turning point about health for some people. And I hope it's you if you are dealing with something with health, but with Jupiter, making that aspect, this is the first time that Jupiter is reaching this spot in 12 years. And Cancer is a very healing sign. And it's making that support to Virgo, which deals with health. It's also great for some sort of a turning point that's about to happen in some cases around work, everyday work life, projects, things that are changing karmically, fatefully, destiny being aligned here about the future. So again, it's just more hopeful, more supportive, more inspired for some people, especially if you have 19 degrees of Cancer or Virgo. So that's the first aspect of the day. I think that that's playing out all through Friday, is this sextile between Sun and Jupiter. This can give opportunity in some work cases as well. Like, there could just be some good news for some people here about work. But I'm hoping it's more about health for some people that need it. All right, and then we have the moon making an inconjunction to Mars. So there is a moment here, first thing in the morning on Friday. It is super early, so it'll be done by the time a lot of people are up. But if you live on the East Coast or if you're in Europe, this is going to be something that you're dealing with in the morning. So the mood, the feelings, the circumstances, having to make this adjustment to activity with other people or relationships versus your own desires of what you would like to be doing in the moment. It could trigger a little bit of irritation or something like that first thing on Friday morning. And then the moon as it reaches the end of Taurus, is starting to connect with Saturn at 29 Pisces. That can show some feelings are still very grounded, practical, more mature, stable, better reactions to things, more of a mature emotional reaction, generally speaking, for people as we're going through Friday, late morning into the afternoon hours. And there is going to be a mood change as the day goes on from the moon in Taurus ingressing Gemini. But the moon is headed for this minor grand trine that's in place on this outer planet level for the world, that's shaping the world in new ways, restructuring the world with new rules and systems. Circumstances are about to connect to that, indicating that as the day goes on, the second half of Friday, there's likely to be important world developments happening on the mundane level, showing big things. But the moon does change signs into Gemini. And now with the moon in Gemini, it's right next to Uranus. So things get a little more crazy, a little more, some instability could come in, even though there's still a sextile to Saturn, which I think is helpful. And the moon is making easy aspects here. So I don't think it's too crazy, but it is next to Uranus. Also, this Uranus transit, I've seen it play out in different ways for people, and it really comes back to people's own karma in their own birth chart of what they're here for. Because I've seen Uranus move over someone's sun, and maybe they get fired, and then their life changes in a whole new way that's way more positive than if they had that job that they got fired from. In other cases, and one example that just happened in August, I don't know if you heard about it, it's been on the news, is this young Gemini chick from Ukraine came to the United States, and she got murdered on a train randomly. And I looked at her chart, and her sun is at 1 degree of Gemini. For the first time in her life, this Uranus transit moved over her sun, showing that crazy incident that came out of the blue. But I also saw that she has major karma about it. And that's hard to see because she didn't do anything to deserve it in this lifetime, but there's somehow a connection to what happened on a deeper level that was a part of her karma for some reason. So again, for some people, based on their own karma, can be negative. That brings out surprises. Other people can be positive. Even if it seems negative in the moment, it can lead to positivity for some people. So it can go either way, and the moon is coming into this aspect, kind of activating this wild card vibe of moon Uranus. So some instability, some changes. Now that the moon is in Gemini, it's being ruled by Mercury over here. Mercury is strong. It's exalted. It's getting ready to conjunct the sun for a turning point. It's past the south node. But now it shows that generally people's mood is more intellectual. There's a stronger emotional need for communication and doing a variety of different things. A lot more activity and outward energy comes in to the process. But it still leads back to Mercury in Virgo, which deals with health and work and service and everyday routine and practical things of life. But it's just not as stable, and there's just more changes taking place, most likely second half of Friday. But at the same time, we have Mercury making that sextile to Jupiter. And I still think that this is one of the most beneficial aspects of the week because Mercury's exalted and Jupiter's exalted, and they're supporting each other. So the mind, thoughts, communications, there could be positive surprises that come out for people that brings good news. I wish I could say for everybody, there's still always a chance that some people could have bad news or something, or other surprises that are shocking in some cases. But in the background, this is generally talking about something more positive because of this connection between Mercury and Jupiter. Again, it can be more hopeful, inspired, good news, good thinking differently. After a lot of fate and karma about the past has gotten through here by this point on Friday, or purging and purification, reorganizing, changes in work, changes in health. Good news in health is what I'm hoping for, like I said, for most people here. So that's one of the things that I think is very possible, especially if you have 19 to 20 degrees of Cancer or Virgo in your chart, and especially if you have that sextile between two planets in your chart, then this is a rare aspect that you're receiving because Jupiter is only here every 12 years. So the way to use this, Friday afternoon, it's best if you can find the exact time. If you go to my aspect list in the description and then you calculate your local time based on what I write in there, adjust your time to Arizona time. So Arizona time never changes. It's always Mountain Standard Time. So during, in the summer, spring through summer, it's the same as California. And then when the time changes for everybody else in the fall, it's the same as Mountain Time. But just look up. All you have to do is Google it. Ask your phone, what time is it in Arizona, and then calculate the difference, and then you know exactly when those aspects are exact in your location. So try to do things like if you need to apply for something, this is a great time to do it when this aspect is in place on Friday afternoon or evening, if it's practical in your location based on the time. But if you need to make a phone call, if you need to write something, deal with anything mercurial, this is a great aspect to do it. It can have better results. If you need to publish, write something, anything like that, anything mercurial, this is a great aspect to take advantage of. Could be good news for some people about real estate, property, home, family stuff as well. All right, so that is Friday evening, Friday night, depending on where you live. And then the moon is really wrapped up in this minor grand trine. So it has a sense on Friday night that things are connected to this bigger picture in the future and what's developing for the long-term future. Definitely on the global world level, there could even be something positive coming out on Friday night in some case that's showing something connected on this bigger world global level that's happening. The moon is trine Pluto, sextile Neptune, and with Uranus. So it's kind of this mixed bag of all these different influences all at once. Still connecting to group and friends and community. It's more social. It's more outward and communicative, busier. Still a little bit of a rebelliousness in the air with this, with Moon conjunct Uranus and this new flavor that we've never had in our lifetime. Plus connecting to Pluto and Aquarius, it can be a little bit rebellious. And then connecting to dreams, fantasies, hopes, things that are inspiring for people. The only wild card factor, I would say overall, it would be pretty stable. It's just that the moon is conjunct Uranus, but it still comes back to that Mercury sextile Jupiter. So I don't think it's the normal moon conjunct Uranus. I think this one is much more beneficial than the average that we'll experience, every time the moon goes through Gemini. Okay, so that is Friday night. Very interesting dynamics there. And that will kind of set the tone for the rest of the night until we get to Saturday on September 13. The moon is still in Gemini, still being ruled by Mercury and beginning to separate from this sextile from Jupiter. So I do think that the weekend is a little more challenging. Again, it's a very fateful time. Fate and destiny is playing out. This is where Mercury is conjunct the Sun. So whatever kind of carried over from Friday in positive ways, it can also be a sense of realization about something with Mercury conjunct the Sun. Important news, important information, a turning point of some kind for people for Saturday, which is also extremely fateful because the moon comes into this T-square with the nodes of fate. That's going to be later on in the afternoon, evening hours of Saturday. So the first part of the day, it's really the moon it's really Mercury conjunct the sun for most of the day, which again can really bring out a lot of realizations and insights and important communications and news and things like that, especially with the moon going through Gemini that deals with communication and information. So be on the lookout. If you have 21 degrees of Virgo, you're really aligned with this Mercury conjunct the sun, especially personal planets, like one of your most important planets at 21 Virgo, then something is perfectly aligned with you. And then that's followed up by Jupiter, which will reach 21 degrees in a sextile with your personal planets in Virgo. And that'll be a 3-part process from now until next year that you have something rare from Jupiter connecting to that. That kind of comes out this weekend or Friday into the weekend with Mercury conjunct the sun. So be on the lookout for better understanding, realizations, insights, news, and information. That's very fateful. That even could put people at a fateful crossroads because of the moon T-squared the nodes of fate as we're going through Saturday night. For some people, this will be early morning hours on Sunday morning if you live on the East Coast or in Europe. It'll be late Saturday night if you're on the West Coast and in Mountain Time. And then this leads to the challenge of this lunar cycle, leads to the last quarter moon, which will come in on Sunday, September 14, as the moon is going through the last degrees of Gemini, first aspect on Sunday early morning. So it kind of gets triggered on Saturday night into early morning Sunday for people as the moon T-squares the nodes of fate and then squares the sun for the last quarter moon, which is what we call the crisis in consciousness from an evolutionary perspective, one of the only evolutionary concepts I use. And that's where the inner is at odds with the outer. So how people are feeling is at odds with where the focus is first thing on Sunday morning. For people on the West Coast, this will already be done most likely by the time you wake up on Sunday morning. But it could trigger some sleep issues if you're sleeping or some other challenges. It doesn't have to be necessarily anything major, but in this particular last quarter moon, it feels like it has effects on the future because of the nodes here and this turning point for Mercury conjunct the sun and all these other important things that are happening. But the moon in Gemini is still being ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is strong. So I think that goes a long way, and it's still within orb of Jupiter, sextile. So I think it still has more of a potential of being easier and having more of a positive result for a lot of people, but I can't guarantee everybody will have a positive result for Sunday. It's still a challenge. There's still a lot of emotional tension happening. So this could show some people, they might have to do something they don't want to do, or it might just be psychologically, mentally, emotionally, they have to work something out about whatever came out on Friday or Saturday, and then they have to work it out in their mind, and figure it out and look at things in a new way. Something like that. The mind and the heart are on two different pages for a little bit as this is getting worked out on Sunday. So this is not the time to be doing mercurial things, even though when Mercury gets activated in a square, people tend to be pushed more into doing things because squares are action aspects that kind of show the tension that moves things and makes things happen. But it's not always easy or smooth, and it's a little more of a challenge and a tension that comes along with the process. So there might be important communications, important activities on Sunday that are taking place for some people. And then it smooths out a little bit as then the moon will sextile Venus and trine Mars, which I think stimulates that Venus-Mars sextile that will be exact the following day for next week, Monday. But this does show that there's an outlet to relieve the tension. There's a minor grand trine between Moon, Venus, and Mars. So the relationship, the pleasure, recreational things, connecting with other people in more of a playful, creative, better, easy flowing connection versus the more serious stuff of life that people are dealing with, that they still have a thought about, a focus on, either health stuff, work stuff, karmic things that they've been dealing with in some way. But yet they can relieve that tension when they're open to kind of letting it go for a little bit on Sunday and dealing with the more fun relationship or activities with other people or creative things, that kind of ease that tension and give you more of an enjoying time for a few hours on Sunday. Still kind of first thing in the morning though. And then that won't last because then the moon will come into more challenging aspects. So it's just like there's this window of time that offers some relief, perhaps based on what people are doing that's more fun and creative and enjoyable, versus the background that's serious, that's tense, that has some pressure and responsibilities that they're picking up on and feeling. And with the moon in Gemini, it's a dualistic sign. It can be kind of all over the place. So one moment feeling happy and enjoyable, and then another feeling the pressure and the stress and the tension. And then that next challenging aspect will be when the moon is reaching the end of Gemini and beginning to square Saturn at this critical degree for Sunday evening, Sunday night. So this comes in, Sunday night. Right before the moon changes signs, this will lead to a big mood change. But the moon squares Saturn, pretty heavy. It's also a first quarter square between moon and Saturn. So that's where last week, when the moon was at the end of Pisces after that eclipse and it reached Saturn right before it came into Aries, that's like was planting seeds about what needs to happen for this week and next week. And now it's a little bit of a pressure about those responsibilities, that tension that was being felt from behind the scenes, energetically, psychologically. Again, what needs to be finalized and taken care of the past, behind the scenes, privately. So it's just picking up on something heavy here. It can kind of change the mood, tone things down. It can be a little more depressing for a moment here until the moon changes signs. And then that kind of leads to more of a feeling of isolation or privacy or wanting to escape something. And then it kind of like, for a lot of people, I think it pushes people into their own private world, wanting to be more safe and secure and comfortable, because then that leads to the moon ingressing Cancer, where the moon is strong here. But then right when the moon ingresses Cancer on Sunday night, it's squaring Neptune. And the moon is no longer like feeling comfortable with all of these outer planets that are going through this big world change. So moon square Neptune can be confusion, uncertainty about things, just this little bit of even like, you got to be careful of getting wrapped up into delusions or things that aren't true here. Don't get too carried away with your feelings and your emotions on Sunday evening, Sunday night. You might feel differently as time goes on. So just kind of chill, relax, retreat. Don't get carried away with anything here. But it could be a sense of some uncertainty that's come in for some people, and a heaviness. But now the moon in Cancer for the next 2.5 days, it is going to be approaching that Jupiter eventually for next week. I think things will improve. It generally shows, again, a need for nurturing, being in more of a safe, secure place. People are more protective and guarded. It brings up more things about the homeland, about your own home and property and real estate, your family life and inner life, and your emotional needs, basically. But people generally are feeling like they need to be nurtured here. And it's a little bit challenging for whatever reason. At the same time as the moon is beginning to go through the beginning of Cancer, it's inconjunct to Pluto. So it's really at odds with the friends, the group, the community stuff. That's where the power, the intensity is. And the moon down here is like, doesn't really want to be a part of that. Or people come into their home or their place of comfort and they just want to like chill and do their own thing or something. And then maybe friends are, maybe they have to adjust to friends like getting involved or something, or phone calls, or, maybe a neighbor knocks on the door, like things like that can be a little bit irritating, and having to adjust to this mood that people want in their own place of comfort, or adjusting to intense political things out in the world, and just the outer world is at odds with the preferences of needs as we're going through Sunday night. Picking up on a little bit of the power dynamics, things that are deeper under the surface and stuff like that. And that's the last aspect for Sunday night. So it won't be the entire night. It's really this adjustment of this mood change that takes place. And then it's like, it is pretty late on the West Coast by the time that this moon gets past that. So for other people, it is really early morning on Monday already. So you got to realize, I'm on the West Coast, so the East Coast is 3 hours ahead of me until the time changes. Then you'll be 2 hours ahead of me, and Europe is way ahead. So just realize where I'm at in the world when I talk about the times of these aspects. Okay, so that is Sunday night. Comes into a new moon phase and feelings of things. And then we get to Monday on September 15. We do have this aspect building up. It's not perfectly exact, but it's close enough to be relevant. And that's Mars building that opposition to Chiron. But at the same time, Venus is building the trine to Chiron. That's going to be playing out in next week's report. But here on Monday, technically, there's just one major aspect for the major aspects that I use, and not including all those other, space rocks floating around up in the sky, but just the main planets here. So Venus is sextile Mars. That's the main aspect for Monday. And that's where the lovers are connecting in harmony. Now, it's only a sextile. It's not like the most powerful aspect in the world. And I think that you still have to take the initiative to get the most benefits from it. But this is showing a lover's connection, Venus and Mars. Now, Venus is stronger because Mars is under the rulership of Venus. So Venus is like hosting Mars. So it's the feminine is more in charge, basically, of the feminine masculine dynamic. The feminine has the say. But perhaps the masculine can be a little more cooperative, and just generally speaking, these two are in harmony with each other, which can add some spice. It can add a little more passion to the equation. It can bring people together or show that there's a connection that's possible that's happening next week here on Monday. Let's see the timing of this. This is actually going to be exact on Monday night, so it's building up all day on Monday. The moon is still in Cancer, which still shows this emotional comfort need and indulgent for nurturing. And, so like the moon, the circumstances are showing people still want to be in their safe place or home or comfort zone or comfort food, and just be more sensitive and still a little bit guarded and protective. But then there's this outward vibe of Venus and Mars that's more social, more creative, more recreational or fun. That's also there and available. Plus the moon is approaching Jupiter, so that tends to start to amplify the good vibes of the moon. Feelings and nurturing and goodwill and generosity are building up. And it does feel like any kind of a relationship connection, if this aligns with you, because it won't be everybody. Not everybody will get this, but if you are engaged in any kind of romantic activity or just general relationship activity, it could have a healing effect based on this connection to Chiron. Still have to be careful. It could still trigger some insecurities, some vulnerabilities, But I think because Venus is trine, there's opportunity for help here. On a mundane level, it could be some sort of help or cooperation for people in need, or wounded people could have some more support or something coming in. Worst case scenario would be a negative dynamic because of the Mars opposite Chiron that could show conflict in the world dynamic, but I feel like it's more positive. So I'd be surprised if it was a negative event. So if you have 25 degrees of a personal planet at 25 Leo or 25 Libra, especially if you have that sextile between two planets in your birth chart, then the transits up in the sky are aligned with you, and you could really see this in your personal life in some way. So if you do want to, if you want to, I don't know, ask someone out, go, like initiate some sort of romantic activity with someone, this could be a good time to do it on Monday night. So that's what we have for the week ahead. And I hope that's helpful. I appreciate you watching, and I'm hoping you have a great week ahead. Catch you on the next one.